So what other things did you find with Chippewa? Like, is there any, you've gone there, you've done some investigation there. Did you guys get any other information that came up, or just sort of I mean, it's
No,
kind of
that was
neat
it.
that you were able to
That was it. We were there the one time, and basically that's what we got. Trudy's name came through the spirit box, and I got a response to my question as to what side did they fight for. So.
Right, interesting. And speaking of sort of the War of 1812 things, because we have so many of those sites here in Niagara that there's so many of them. I mean, even here in Port Colborne, where I am, there were signal fires lit on Sugarloaf for the ships that were out in the lake. So they were lighting the signal fires to keep them. Gravelly Bay at that time was quite dangerous with rocks, and hence Gravelly Bay. But also too, there was a small settlement here, Sugarloaf, already, with loyalists who had started coming in the 1700s. And so they were set up. There was a mill here. There was numerous things. Where I live is now part of Port Colborne, but back then it was Humberston. So it had its own mill and its own, and then just across the canal, literally across, if I look out my window there, right there, was Petersburg. So there was 3 little villages in this area. And while we didn't see any battle here, I mean, you had those soldiers moving from as far away as Port Ryerson, Port Dover, right across and all along the edge of the lake, and then Niagara River as well. So there's a lot of hot spots here for the activity. And Stony Creek, while Stony Creek itself, I never really get anything when I'm at Stony Creek, because where it isn't where the battle was, but the house itself and the area around it where the field hospital was, every once in a while I'll pick up some weird vibes there, right? I'll get some things there. But because there's a whole subdivision now on the area where the battle was, you just really are not going to get the great readings that you would get if it was still open. Speaking of 1812 too, I've had a couple of experiences at Fort Mississauga, which was after the fact, but I've had a couple of things there. I've had Fort George for sure, Fort Erie, definitely. Actually, Fort Erie was a really funny one. I'll have to tell you about Fort Erie, because I've gone there numerous times. We take place in the reenactment there. We're vendors, so we're merchants. We don't actually go out in the battlefield. But I've had a couple of experiences there. One of them was prior to ever doing that. Ed and I had gone to the fort one day just for something to do. And it was, again, another hot summer day, because why not, right? Do something. I remember going. And just outside of the wall, I mean, there's stories there you get of the haunting of the officer who, lost his head.
Oh yeah, one guy lost his head, the other lost his arms. Yeah.
In the I think that was in the blast, though. That was I can't recall exactly what happened with that one. But the interesting thing is that we were inside, and we were just up in one of the areas overlooking where they do the battle now, in the field there, and I started to get these strange images of soldiers, except not there. It was about a kilometer or so down the road in the other direction, and I could see these soldiers, but it was weird because I could see them, they were all lying down. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And, then somebody at the fort there was saying, oh, well, there's these soldiers buried over here. And I'm like, no, they're not here. I said, they're down the road over there. And I remember saying that, and I'm going, I'm not quite sure exactly where, but we'll have to take a drive and see if I can scope it out. But it's down there. I can, in my mind's eye, I can actually see it from where I am, but there's no houses there. It's just, it's just the area.
Also about a kilometer down the road, that's where Snake Hill was. Again,
right.
Which was a field hospital.
Yeah.
And when that was being developed, some guy was building his house
Well, in the
And
basement, and found, and that's the funny thing,
and
because that's a kind of, when I heard that, I was like, see, I told you.
yeah, and they uncovered these skeletons
Yeah,
of,
these bodies, I think there was
I think it was
12 of them
28,
or something. Yeah, I know there was like
yeah,
12 within his
soldiers. Yeah.
foundation or something. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what I saw, was when I was seeing this, it was maybe just a kilometer away, right? And I could see this like area where people were laid out, and it looked very much like, they were dead. But it wasn't laid out like a cemetery. It was just, quick plots. People were buried, and it was
Mhm.
rather shallow too. Like, in terms of now, it would be probably 6 or 8 feet down, but then the topography was different. So it was probably only about 4 feet in. Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting thing, because as I heard, like a year or so later, this guy had discovered these bodies, and I was like,
There
just
you go.
validates
Yeah.
the fact that I had pictured this in my mind's eye while I was at the fort, and I could see this beyond and that. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story of this area especially, and if you are looking for sort of haunted places, the area itself, all the way along the shores of Lake Erie. But I found it really interesting when I did a bit of digging. There's something known as what they call the anniversary ghosts. And these are apparently spectral soldiers that are, they sort of come forward every year on the day of the battle. So I feel it's a bit like the Battle of Fort Erie, because if you've ever been there and it actually takes place on the day that battle happened, it's a very weird feeling. It really stirs up the energy there, right? So I
It
think that
is. Yeah, I've been there.
yeah,
Actually, yeah, because the battle at Fort Erie was the early hours, probably about
yes,
2 a.m. I think it was,
yeah, it was sort of in the middle
August
of the
15th.
night. Mm-hmm.
The one time we were there, we went in the afternoon of August 14th.
Right.
And yeah, exactly. You could feel the weirdness around the place. That
It's
yeah.
uncannily strange. I mean, I ended up making the mistake a couple of years ago of actually going out onto the field, and being a privateer, I wouldn't have been fighting, but I actually stepped out into the field where they were fighting, and the reenacting, and they blow up the powder keg every
Mm-hmm.
year there. And I mean, it's literally a pyrotechnics explosion, but it's enough that it's big, it's loud, and if you are a spirit that died there, it's
It's a
just
trigger object.
it was weird. I mean, the feeling that I got, it was overwhelming. I actually had to leave and go away from it. It was just so, I was seeing things out there that I don't even know what was going on. I know there was this reenactment happening, but I was seeing soldiers, I was seeing people running in different directions, completely, not what was happening within the organized reenactment. And I
Yeah.
went back to the booth, and I was like, that was just way strange. Like, I'm sure that it just brought up that whole imagery. But with Culloden, this seems to be the same situation. There's people that live nearby, and there's apparently a story of a local woman who lived on the land where the Jacobite forces were marching their soldiers, right? And she says that she can hear this marching and this, the voices. She never sees anything, but she can hear it. And that's sort of something interesting as well, right? That I think that the writer of Outlander, if I can remember her name, what is it, Diana Gabaldon, I think, some such thing like that. She even walked the battlefield there so that she could get a feel of it. But people really, really say that Culloden is quite haunted. And I know that there's stones there, and I think there's like the McIntosh clan, and there's, sort of the memories, the reminders of the people that fought on the site. But it was a very one-sided battle. You've got the Scottish with swords and pitchforks and pikes and whatever implements they have, and you've got the British coming in with a lot of long guns and cannons and things that there's no way you're going to be able to fight against that, right? So it was a very one-sided battle, and like I say, a lot of people died at Culloden. But my experience there, like I said, was just an overwhelming feeling of fear, and not my fear, which was really weird because,
you're just picking up on that.
I'm picking it up, right? And depending on where I was walking at the time, what area I was walking on, and we were using GPR at the time, and this was like archaeological work, right? So this wasn't ghost work, but it's just always that way for me. So, but there were certain areas where I was walking where you could really distinctly tell who was where the British were and where the Scottish were in terms of the Jacobite and you could really feel the difference in the energy. But there was so much fear in this one area that it was overwhelming. Like I felt like I wanted to run, just get out of there. And it's really hard to explain that to people that you're working with because they're not feeling it. And, it's science-based, right? I mean, here we are, there's a bunch of scientists. We're out here doing, what we do, creating grid patterns. And